What's happening, everybody? Welcome into a brand new episode of Phillitin Words. Anthony Sanfilippo's here. I'm Bob Wankel. Phillies take 2 out of 3 this week at Citizens Bank Park over the Athletics without a city, right? Look, Anthony, I got to tell you, it's par for the course that we hop on, with negative stuff to talk about. But I think before we do that, it's worth recognizing that after being 10 games below 500, we're talking about whether or not this is even going to be a watchable season. Like, can you talk yourself into getting revved up for first pitch at 6:40 on a Tuesday night in the middle of June and being like, hey, this team's got at least a chance? If nothing else, they've kind of worked their way back into relevance. But there are obviously still a lot of problems. This A's team right now, first place in the AL West, a good offense. We sure as hell saw that last night. They had kind of been held in check those first 2 games of the series. So I don't think there's any shame in taking 2 out of 3 or failing to complete a sweep. And that's how I kind of come into this show. I think overall they're trending in a positive direction, but there certainly are some red flags to me that still exist. And I'm not quite ready to be like, hey, ain't no stopping us now. No looking back. Like, there's some real problems that are going to persist for this team. So I bring you in this morning, and I want you to tell me how you feel and how everyone should feel as we go into this weekend against the Rockies.
Well, I think that everyone should feel better about the team than where they were. Everybody was, clinging to the side of the bridges in the Philadelphia area with their fingernails when they were 9-19. And look, they were bad. And we said it on this show. They were not good, and they were on the precipice of bottoming out pretty quickly. But we also said they're a lot better than what they had shown. And I think that we thought we'll see it at some point. Now, are they going to get back to winning 90-some games? I don't know if they're going to get that far. But I think I said last week, I look at this team and I say, I still think it's a playoff team. Right? I still think that they're going to be there at the end of the season. These opponents have not been the greatest, but when you're a good team and you're playing bad teams, this is what you're supposed to do, right? I mean, it's what you're supposed to do. So I think that you should be feeling better about them, but I also think there are things that you cannot overlook at this point when it comes to the Phillies and sit there and go, yeah, this could be a concern going forward.
And this is the way I look at it. You go into the San Francisco series last week and you're like, what can I ask for? What can I reasonably expect, especially given the way the team's been playing? You say 2 out of 3. Well, they sweep them. They exceed expectations. They go out and they play a chippy Marlins team on the road for 4 games. And you say, like, what do you reasonably expect given the way that this team's playing? And you probably say series split in 4. They go out and they win 3 out of 4. You cannot expect a team to sweep a 4-game set on the road. Like, they either met or exceeded expectations in that series. The A's, again, playing pretty decent baseball thus far this season. What can you reasonably expect the Phillies to do in that series? Win 2 out of 3, right? And they did that. And so they have to stack series wins. They have to do this little by little. They're not going to erase this deficit. I mean, they've done a great job of erasing a great deal of it. But and when I say the deficit, I don't mean the division standings. I mean just getting back to respectability, starting to play baseball that's at or near or above 500. They're there. This weekend, you have another opportunity. Like, what can you expect this weekend? I don't think that this Phillies team is good enough or consistent enough to expect a sweep. But, like, should they sweep the Rockies? A team that's I know they won yesterday against the Mets, but have been pretty bad overall. And certainly going to be one of the worst teams in the sport. Like, yeah, this is a weekend where you could make a move. Certainly you should win the series. And if you do that, you get yourself to 19-22. You're 3 games under. If you sweep them, you get to 1 game under. And so they have an opportunity right in front of them this weekend to really almost erase that entire 10-game skid and really, pull back to even here, which would be impressive if they're able to do that come, Mother's Day. I mean, I don't think anybody, when this change from Thompson to Don Mattingly was made, would have thought they could have ever gotten back to this spot this quickly. And so I commend them for that. Now, all that being said, with the pleasantries out of the way, I mean, we have to talk about what we saw last night. And can I know that all the hot air is going, dedicated to Andrew Painter, who was terrible last night and has been tremendously disappointing thus far. And we'll get there. And we're going to spend a lot of time on that here in a minute or two. But can I just say, like, in the midst of all of that, like on the flip side, can you not do a little bit more against Ginn last night? I mean, like 8 innings, 4 hits, 1 earned run, 8 strikeouts. Like that was a disgraceful offensive performance.
Yeah,
I know what you're going to say. When a starting pitcher buries you like that, it takes all the air out of the balloon. Also, yeah, fine. But like, come on, man, sack up. You got a bunch of veterans here. Hit the ball.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, but that is exactly what I was going to say. It's just, it happens, right? It's as much as you want your team to still fight back. You get down 8-0. It's like, forget it. Like they're just kind of going through the motions. They're out there. It's like, all right, well, chalk this one up.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I get it. And I get it. You want your guys to every game, want to be, we could get back into this.
I'm not saying get back into it. I'm not saying once you get put in a 7-0 hole in the 3rd inning, 8-0 hole by the 4th inning, that you have to get back into it and win the game. But like, can we do more than 1 solo home run? Like,
so what I think, Bob, and I think that also this comes into play too, and you don't think about this, but sometimes, if it was, let's say it was the first game of the series, right? I would bet that even if they were down 7-0, 8-0, they would still go out there and try to put up some runs to get into the bullpen a little bit, right? Maybe help yourself down the line in the rest of the series. You're going to lose the game, but you start making them use up their bullpen and pitchers. It might help you in games 2 and 3. When you're in the final game of a series, you've already won the first 2, and that happens 8-0. I think that it's like, all right, well, there's no benefit in forcing the A's to throw their, get to their bullpen, whatever. Like, it's just kind of like, all right, this is the one we're going to lose.
Well, it's very much in this team's DNA to lose that game last night. We saw this a number of times last year, even when they were just playing fantastic baseball consistently overall. There were a number of times where the Phillies would let that final game of a potential sweep go. And I'm not surprised that they lost last night. I thought the odds going into the game, I think that they were a -130 favorite at that point before first pitch. I thought that was somewhat telling as well. Like, it's situationally, I don't think that there's any real issue with them failing to complete a sweep. Again, like, I'm not going to assume that, and I'm not going to kill them for that. But what a non-competitive game it was. And it was a non-competitive game because Andrew Painter took the ball and was just atrocious last night. And, look, this A's lineup, I know that there's not a bunch of household names. And I know that they're sort of off the radar, probably for Philadelphia baseball fans, especially people that kind of exclusively watch and follow the Phillies. But it's a good lineup, and they can do some things. They have a number of very good hitters in that lineup. I would certainly take the A's lineup over the Phillies lineup for the remainder of this season. That's how much I think about that lineup personally. But Painter, look, this has been a trend. It's been a recurring problem here. It really all kind of comes down to the fastball. And before we get into like all of the deep dive stuff, I guess I'd like to know where you're at on Andrew Painter this morning, how you should feel about his viability to be a contributor this season. And like, when you start to talk about this kid, he's supposed to be this ascending star and a top of the rotation arm that they can kind of build around moving forward. You certainly don't want to write anybody off or get crazy here, but like, should there be some concern about what he ultimately may become?
No, I don't go that far. It's way too soon. It's way too early for that. You got to remember, his professional baseball experience is limited, like in general, because of the injury. He didn't pitch a lot in the minors either, other than last season. Like there's a lot still to come with a kid like this. And it's a matter, in my mind, it's a matter of him figuring out how to pitch post Tommy John, and he just hasn't done it yet. Right. And then fastball is the issue. And it's interesting because his velocity is still way above average. Like, it's 2 miles per hour above the National League or Major League average for pitchers. So he's throwing hard. It's just not commanding it right.
He's not commanding it, and it has no movement either. I mean,
right.
That's the other part. Like when you talk about velo, like that's great, but there has to be late run. There has to be horizontal, vertical break. Like there's no run on these pitches. Like they're very flat.
Yeah.
And like I thought it was interesting. So like there's two different ways to tackle this, right? Anthony DeBundo, who used to work for Action Network and I believe is a contributor to The Ringer now, tweeted this last night. Andrew Painter's fastball so far in 2026, 90 stuff plus, 100's average, an 8.7% whiff rate, 22% is average, and opponents are hitting 373 against it with a 576 slugging percentage. Like even with the velocity being a tick up, it just shows you how ineffective that pitch has been and how incredibly hittable it's been. And so I'm encouraged that he's not throwing 94 miles an hour. But when you talk about Andrew Painter and where this kid was and how he was viewed 2 years ago, he was special and he was thought to be special and a kid that could hit the ground running and have immediate success because of how dominant and how special his fastball was. And so for that to be the thing right now that he cannot command and that does not have that late pop through the zone, like that is a little bit troubling to me. Do I think he's cooked? Do I think he's screwed? No, of course not. But like if he can't get a handle on this, like he becomes a very ordinary pitcher.
Well, sure. I mean of course he would. And like I look at it, Bob, and I say the start has not been great. I expected there to be some, roadblocks and some speed bumps along the way for him in his first year. It's not been as good as I thought it would be. Better than it's been, and it's not.
Well,
so I think there are things. Just
set this. I mean, he has a 6.89 ERA, a 1.71 WHIP. I mean, it's been messy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, it's like I would have expected at this point an ERA in the high fours. Maybe a WHIP around 1.5. Right. Like that. Yeah. That's kind of what I would have expected. And if that's what it would have been, I would have said, yeah, he's a rookie kind of figuring it out. He'll be all right. No worries. And it's been a little worse than that. So yeah, do I think it's something you got to monitor, something you got to watch? You got to figure out that fastball command. And you're right. And that is the key, because the secondary stuff's been okay. Right. It's not been terrible. So I think it really comes down to the fastball. And if he could figure out how to command it, and he starts getting that ERA to come down a little bit, whatever, and the WHIP to come down a little bit, I think we'll sit there and go, okay, he'll be fine. The one thing I like about Painter is I like his approach and his demeanor. Like he doesn't seem to let this stuff really eat at him and bother him. I thought it was kind of an interesting thing, the interesting side note from last night where Mattingly was thinking about pulling him an inning early, and Painter said, I want to go out there and try and figure this out. And Mattingly let him. It didn't work, but you kind of, you get the sense that he wasn't like, okay, it's just not my day, take my ball, go home. So like there's things like that you sit there and go, I think that he's the kind of guy who will be committed to figuring it out. And so therefore I believe in that. But yeah, it is concerning to this point that you haven't gotten better productivity from him.
I agree with you. And I hear you on that. I guess I do find it encouraging. And he knows that this team needs to have some innings, gobbled up, and he doesn't want to leave the bullpen hanging out to dry. And so he tries to go back out there. And I appreciate that. I respect that. At the same time, like I watched him in that start against the Marlins, and he couldn't figure it out. He loads the bases for the second time in, I believe, 2 or 3 inning span, and he walks in a pair of runs. And so like wanting the ball and saying like, I want to figure this out is great, but like, I also need you to like bear down in that spot and find your command. He's getting beat around in the first inning last night, and then he can't throw a strike. He can't locate. I think he's kind of scared to get into the zone, because when he's in the zone, he's getting pounded. And like, you can see him, with the body language, not that he's like wilting, but you can see he's like, it looks like to me that everything is sped up for him right now, and it has in real time him questioning his stuff. Not that he doesn't feel like he can't do it or that he can't be successful, but I think in the moment he's looking at the opposition and going like, I'm not sure where to go here. And then he gets a little bit too fine, and then he digs the hole even deeper.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if he would be, it would be beneficial for him to try and pitch a little bit backwards. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I
Like
do.
yeah, just to see if all of a sudden the fastball plays differently. I mean, can't be worse, right? I mean, if you go out there and you pitch backwards and they're still hitting your fastball, well, then you got another problem, right? We got to figure out.
I,
But I don't know. I just think that's he's used to doing something a certain way and not failed at it until last year in AAA and now this year in the majors. Maybe if you try it a little bit differently and see if you find something that you didn't think would be effective and it turns out that it is.
yeah, I also found his comments after the game to be a little strange. And maybe you can make sense of this for me. I know you had the Flyers last night, so you
Yeah.
weren't there. But Langoliers, Rooker, and Wilson, they each homer off of inside fastballs. And by the way, I'm reading Todd Zalecki's piece right now on MLB.com to kind of credit this. And Painter said, I think that was part of the setup. I think the approach there was everything hard was in and everything soft was away. So I would imagine approach there was if they saw it in, they thought it was a fastball. If they saw it away, they figured it was spinning or they were taking it. Like, okay, I don't want to oversimplify here, but like if that's the case and you're sort of diagnosing that while out there, like why wasn't the pitch mix changed? And is he reflecting on that, or is he saying in real time, like our game plan sucked tonight? Like what is that?
I read it the same way you did when I read it this morning, and I thought that he meant in retrospect, looking back on it, hindsight being 2020, they picked up on that, and I didn't change. Like that's how I read it, but I can understand why you would look at it and say, "Oh, we thought our game plan was terrible," and because the reason though I don't believe that he's saying that. It twofold. One, I don't think he's the kind of kid that would say that. But two, the Phillies game plans are usually pretty good for their starting pitchers, right? They did a pretty good job against that Oakland lineup in the first two games of the series. Why all of a sudden would the game plan suck the third time around, right? So I just think it was more of a lack of recognition on his part, and he's looking back and reflecting on it after the fact, saying, okay, so they realized what I was trying to do, and I didn't adjust in game.
Let me ask you the unpleasant question here. Certainly, I would not pull the plug on this. Like I've heard it today. I saw a little bit online last night. Like, oh, should they send them down to the minors and try to reset this thing and work things out? One, they don't really have a great option, and to insert or bring up here. So I wouldn't go down that road. And I think that the level of weight and the level of anticipation for this kid to be up here, you can't say after, a handful of starts, oh, you know what, you're not ready. I think you have to let this play out for, it can't be a thing where it becomes detrimental and has a lingering impact in future games. He's got to be able to get you through 4 or 5 innings. But I think there has to be a runway here that lasts another 4, 5, 6 starts even.
Agree.
And then you say, all right, like if he's only going out there and getting us 13 outs a game or 10 outs a game, that's a different story. But I think you let this thing play out and you let this kid try to figure it out on the fly. Yes,
I agree. And it's worth you. And I'm glad you did that because we have a few comments and I just want to kind of address them. Chris says, if there was another option available, would Painter be sent down to Lehigh? Also, at this point, is Gage Wood a better prospect? I don't think the answer is yes to the latter. I still think Painter is the better prospect than Gage Wood. But I also think that Gage Wood is an interesting name because he could be a guy later this year who could be in play. If Painter doesn't come around, maybe that's an option down the line, but certainly not right now. And I think that you kind of keep it, you keep him where he's at. And even if they had a better option in AAA, right? Even if they had a veteran guy that they could bring in and replace him, I'm not sure that they would do that right now.
I don't think they would either. But in fairness, and to answer the question directly, like I think you are probably 3 to 4 weeks away from that. They're not gonna piss away an opportunity to climb back into this thing so that Andrew Painter can figure it out. Like it's bigger than Andrew Painter. But given who he is, the caliber of prospect that he's thought to be, given how important he is to their future, I just don't see after a couple shaky outings where you say like, I'm out, we're not doing this, go down to Lehigh and work it out. I mean, I think, again, I'd be stunned, barring something insane, that he doesn't get another 5 opportunities through the rotation to kind of show some signs of life here, signs of progress.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And then we have one of my favorite trolls who comes from Snow the Goalie. Weekly reminder that Aiden Miller and Andrew Painter were untouchable pieces in any trade to bring an impact bat in the lineup in the championship window. To which I would say, back to Gritty 123, that you curiously left Justin Crawford out of that comment, and I wonder why. Because I'm sure that you were saying that they should have traded Justin Crawford last year, but I guess because the kid's had a decent start to his season, you don't mention him at all. It's easy to pick on the kid that one kid that's injured and the other kid that's not had a great start to his major league career and say, oh, they suck. Right. I can't go there. I'm sorry.
So there's 2 things with that comment, right? Like, I am a go for it guy. Like, I do kind of say, like, more often than not, like, prospects are prospects. And if you have an opportunity to move the needle and go win a championship, I'm typically in.
Right.
There's a multitude of ways to kind of go about this, though. One, these aren't players to date who aren't good because they aren't good. They aren't effective right now or helping this team right now because of injury.
Right.
Like, in 2023 and 2024, when it was time to go for it, I don't think that you'd be projecting in 23 with Painter, like Tommy John. I don't think with Aiden Miller, you'd be worried about why he's not done baseball activities on May 8th, especially in the case of Miller. Like, this is just something that you would not see coming. So kind of like I think a one-off circumstance. The other part of it is that I don't know what discussions were had. Like, who called the Phillies and said, we want Andrew Painter, and in return, like, you get this player? And would that have pushed the Phillies over the top? Like, I can't kill them because I don't know of a deal that existed where it was like, if you give us Painter.
The only one that we kind of sort of know of is 2 years ago, the Garrett Crochet.
Yeah, and like, I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have done that because, like, so I don't even think that was Painter. I'm misspeaking there, but like, to me now, in retrospect and hindsight, like, I don't think that move would have moved the needle for that team.
Yeah.
What was the problem in that series? It was the problem is they couldn't hit. Like, so what does Garrett Crochet? Does that give that a veteran clubhouse a jolt? Wow, they went all in and it changes the feel. Yeah, like maybe.
Yeah.
Like maybe the world will never know.
Yeah, and the only other one that we know where they were asked for Painter in a trade and it didn't happen was Stephen Kwan.
Yeah, I mean, and thank God they didn't do that.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, so these are the ones that we know of, right? And that was just for Painter. And
there might be. I mean, and that's not to dismiss the overall premise of that comment. Like, there could have been conversations where, like, oh my God, we don't know about it, but they had an opportunity to trade 1 or 2 of these guys and get this player, and maybe they'd like to have it back. But I just don't think, given who these guys are, how young they are, their futures are undefined, and they're working through injury issues. I just don't know that that's entirely fair.
And here's the last comment I want to bring up on this point on Andrew Painter, and it is a good one. And Ethan Pechersky credits Matt Gelb from The Athletic. He says on his podcast at one point, he said that with all the injuries, Painter's ceiling is still as an ace, but the likelihood he hits that ceiling has decreased. And he says, I think that's a perfect summation. That's probably accurate. Right? I mean, like, he still has the stuff to get there, but whereas it seemed like he was a can't miss before, now it's like, maybe he does miss. Maybe he doesn't quite get that high.
Speaking or speculating in an uninformed way here, I don't want to say uninformed. I think that there's a pretty good feel for this. Like, Tommy John in the year 2026 is not a career wrecker. And certainly he's built himself back up. The fastball velocity is good. It's not elite. It's certainly had ramifications on the way the ball moves and his pitch mix and his command, and he's fighting through it. He's not looked like the guy he was pre-injury, but you are like 2 years out now. And like, why do we see a lot of guys come back that second year and be fine? And this kid seems to not be in the moment.
Yeah, and I think the difference is sometimes most of the time guys coming back from Tommy John in year two, you're talking about guys who are major league experience, and
Yeah.
Andrew Painter did not have that. That's the only thing I can say. It's the only thing I can say. By the way, just give us a little pat on the back. Thanks to Larry Bird 1734 says respect both your baseball IQs and what we all know. The Painter will take some time. I think it's valuable innings for him this year. Great show, fellas. So thanks, Larry.
I gotta be honest with you, I appreciate that comment because I feel dumber than ever right now. I feel like I'm getting dumber by the day. I really do. So I needed that. That was a little lift here on a Friday
There you
morning.
go. That's good. That's good.
All right. I mean, so we've had the Painter conversation. On the plus side of things, you and I got into a little text message.
Well, I think Bob, I think you misunderstood what I was saying because I was ripping Russ. I was not ripping you.
I did not. I misinterpreted. So to kind of let everybody in on this, there was a Aaron Nola goes out and throws his career-defining game against the Marlins. It was good. It was a good start. It was a nice start. It was pleasant to see. I was happy for him, and it was a nice win for the Phillies. But afterwards, Anthony sends Russ and myself a text message that says "vintage." And I was like, all right, here we go. We're going to puff our chest after one start against the Marlins about Aaron Nola. And I was like, I liked it, but I'm like, all right, that's fun. That's good. The conversation progresses though. And I had misinterpreted, I suppose, a message that was sent from Anthony. It was like, you don't know pitching. And I'm like, oh, all right. Like, okay. I'm like, I don't know pitching. Sorry, I didn't know that we had Leo Mazzoni.
That was for Russ.
Here. So,
that's what happens. That's what happens when you have a 3-person conversation and everybody's texting at the same time.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, I don't know. I mean, I asked you on Monday morning, we have to come back to this. I said, is there any reason to believe that Aaron Nola can get this together? It doesn't look very good right now. And he goes out and he had one of his best starts over the past 2 seasons. And, what he did on Monday night that was very obvious was that he was using the off-speed stuff earlier in the count. That was a little bit different for him, and it had the Marlins hitters totally off balance and totally out of whack in the first few innings of that game. And his command was much better, and he looked like a guy that, like, at least I'm not all of a sudden saying like, oh, here we go. He's going to turn back the clock. He's a top of the rotation guy. Like, I'm nowhere even near that. But It was nice to see that he can do it, and it was probably nice for himself to see that he can do it during a time where he desperately needed to see himself do it. So I think that, like, if your expectation for Aaron Nola is, can you be an effective number 4 starter, get your ERA into the mid 4s by the end of the season, low 4s, I think is probably the ceiling, but I would take mid 4s, eat up 170, 180 innings. Like, if he can do that, I'm in. I don't love the contract. I wish they didn't do it, but like, you can live with that. And I think you at least saw like a glimpse of hope that he could do that on Monday night.
Yeah. And look, I'm not fully all the way back to, here we go. Here's 2018 Aaron Nola all of a sudden again. The one thing I will say is the Marlins were hitting pretty well going into that game, and that, for him to throw those 6 shutout innings like that was a huge move. And it was smart for him to try and pitch a little bit differently. The question that I still have, and it's not, I think it was a very good start by Nola, but the question that I still have is, all right, so you pitched backwards for a game and it worked.
Yeah.
Is that going to surprise people going forward? Can you continue to do that and have the same success? I don't know that you can. You might get some guys, because their brains are so trained on this is what you normally throw in this spot. Now all of a sudden you're doing something different. You might get some success with that.
Yeah, I don't think that you can do a hard pivot away from what has been successful for you. And I don't think that you can live doing what he did on Monday night, game in, game out. But I think the ability to show it and say, like, we will go there if we need to will be helpful. You can hope anyway that would be helpful. It still comes down to location and execution and consistency. But just putting on tape something for a hitter to think about, I think can be incrementally useful for you.
Yeah, for sure. And, I guess he gets to go against the Rockies next, right, this weekend. Yeah. And then does he get Boston as well?
Let's see here. He definitely goes tomorrow, I believe. I shouldn't say definitely and then say I believe, but he will go tomorrow. And then he should, I think, actually go against the Pirates.
Well, so here's the one thing, and we didn't mention this with the Painter thing, and I forgot. So with the off day Monday,
what do you do there?
Can you push Painter back? Like kind of skip a start, give him some time to work on it, and then you can keep everybody else, on schedule, and then have Painter pitch against Pittsburgh instead of Boston.
Yeah.
Possibly.
No, they do have that option. I'm looking at the schedule here because you have Monday off. You're in Boston for 3, and then you're in Pittsburgh for 3.
Yeah.
So you would have the opportunity to kind of manipulate your rotation there if you wish to do so.
Yeah. So I think that there's a possibility that Nola goes Colorado and then the final game in Boston. Possible. If not, he'll go first game in Pittsburgh for sure.
So I was all excited to come on here and talk about this upward trajectory of this Phillies team and how things are looking a lot better than they were, 10 days ago. And they certainly are. We've gotten to a point now in real time as of this morning. The Phillies have the 10th worst record in baseball. They're actually tied with a ton of teams at 17 and 21. So they're kind of bunched up there, working their way back to mediocrity. I had tweeted out the other night, I guess it was on after the game Tuesday night, the Phillies no longer have the worst run differential in baseball. That is actually no longer true. They're back to the bottom with the Giants at negative 42. Like when the Phillies lose, they lose, man. They do have an opportunity here. Like we talk about run differential, where teams are at. They have an opportunity here this weekend, I think, to kind of make a move. Colorado comes in negative 25 run differential. They're playing really poor baseball right now. I'd like to see them. Can I say, you say like what you're allowed to expect out of a team? Can I say that given the Rockies are 3-7 in their last 10, and I think that they've actually overachieved to a degree so far this season? Can you guys do me a favor? Go ahead and sweep this thing.
Yeah. I think they will. You want my honest? I'm gonna pick a sweep this weekend.
They're a minus 220 favorite tonight.
Yeah,
I mean that's pretty damn strong for a team that, quite frankly, just isn't very good. Right
yeah,
now.
but
Phillies are hot, but they're not very good.
Yeah, but Luzardo's his last couple starts have been really good, and this Rockies team can't hit. So
they got the Mick coming in. I guess you probably won't see Mickey in the lineup tonight because Luzardo's a lefty.
Yeah. I think that you look at the pitching matchups. I mean, you got what? You got Luzardo, Nola, and then is it Sanchez or Wheeler? Sanchez on Sunday.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you should win all 3.
And then they have Dollander tonight, who's been okay. Freeland, who I cannot believe that he's still around, but he's a lefty, and that could pose an issue for the Phillies.
Yeah.
And then Sagano on Sunday, who beat them, I believe, in the Sunday game in Colorado earlier this season, and sort of set off that free fall, by the way, up for the Phillies. So, I don't know. It's not like slam dunk. Well, certainly a slam dunk advantage on Sunday with Sanchez against pretty much anybody, but Nola, Freeland, that could be, interesting. And you would expect Luzardo to get the better of the matchup tonight. But, again, like Dollander's been he's been pretty good.
Dollander's a good prospect. He's a good look. I mean, I know he had a rough first year last year. I mean, there's an example kind of like, you look at when we were talking about Painter, Dollander was their top pitching prospect, maybe not as heralded as Painter was, came in last year and got absolutely torched in his rookie year. They actually started him in the bullpen this year just to kind of try and get him straight. And now he's back in the rotation, and he's actually pitched pretty well for them. Right. So it's just kind of an example of a young pitcher, the development is never linear. And so it could be one of those things. So yeah, I do think that I think they could sweep the Rockies. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
There are a couple things I do want to work through here, like in this Mattingly era. I think that you and I would mostly agree that things look similar to what they looked like when Rob was here.
Yeah.
How the team's operating. But there were some things that kind happened this week that I think are worth kind of talking about. And
this is what I was going to bring up anyway. So I'm glad you went there.
Let's start with the Bryce Harper comments earlier this week with in regards to Bryson Stott. And Bryson Stott has always been an everyday player, and he needs to be an everyday player, and we should see him against lefties. And Bryce is going to bat for his guy, and that's great. The numbers do not suggest that Bryson Stott is an everyday guy, and there were initially some promising signs that he could handle lefties early on in his career, and that has not really been the case. And the Phillies have shied away from exposing him to left-handers more often than not. let's talk about whether or not he's onto something, but let's also talk about what that meant in terms of the way that the Phillies have handled Bryson Stott. Was that like a subtle dig at Rob Thompson?
I don't think it was a dig at Rob Thompson. I think it was a dig at the organization, though, and he was trying to pick up for his buddy from Las Vegas. But this, to me, is evidence, because you say, well, the Mattingly situation seems a lot like the Rob situation, and I think that you're referencing mostly that the way that they put their lineups together, right?
Yes.
Well, I think that this is more indication that in baseball, managers don't really make the lineups much anymore. That this is done by people upstairs and computers putting stuff together and saying this is how to maximize your lineup against this particular pitcher, and that's what they do.
That's what they do. But now that kind of leads into the other thing that's sort of become interesting this week, which is what's going on at third base. And I will do everybody a favor. I'm not going to do a victory parade on Alec Bohm. I'm not going to continue to, recite all of the statistics. Everyone sees it. Everyone knows what's going on. But we are at a point right now when you talk about 177 qualified major league hitters this season. Alec Bohm's 433 OPS ranks 176th, only behind Cedric Mullins.
Yeah.
So we have reached a point with Alec Bohm where it's like, do you continue to trot him out there as the primary option at third base? Last night, he was, I don't want to say benched, but he did not start last night. And Mundo Sosa was at third. The night prior, for the first time in his career, he was removed from a game and was pinch hit for late in that game. And to me, that sort of was an indicator that, like, okay, we've seen enough. Not that they're done with them, but like, we need to think about what we're doing here. I suspect, and you heard Don Mattingly give a vote of confidence that he's going to hit, he's going to help us, he's going to figure it out. I think that it's twofold. One, I think that they're praying that he figures it out. But two, I think that they want to continue in the short term here. And I mean very short term. I think we're at the 5-yard line with this. I think they tried to give him a little reset. Maybe that reset even extends into this weekend. I wouldn't be surprised, but he could be back in there this weekend as early as tonight. I think we're getting very close to, we want to give him one more extended run to see if he can get himself out of this. Like one more straight 6 to 7 to 8 game run to see if he can do this. And if he can't, that's it. I think we're right there. And so it's a weird thing to say, because you're like, well, wait a minute. If they're almost done with him, why would they give him that continued opportunity? It's like, I think they want to give him every opportunity to fail just so that they can close the book on it and say, like, what else could we have done? And I think that's where we're at in this moment right now.
Yeah, and I think you're right, but I also think that there's a timing element to it, Bob, in that, obviously the whole Aiden Miller situation kind of exacerbates this, right? Because if he was playing baseball and was off to a decent start, AA, AAA, wherever the heck he would have been, then you could have said, well, that's the option. We can go to the prospect and bring him in and get it going. Obviously, that doesn't exist. So what's the next alternative? The next alternative is Edmundo Sosa to play for like 6 weeks, which he's done well before. He was filled in for Trey Turner for 6 weeks and did a nice job. But let's get us to the point where we only have to play him for 6 weeks, and then we get to a point where we could trade for something to fill that hole in the lineup. And so when you start looking at the timing element of it, I think that you get there and say, okay, we could give Alec Bohm a run through the end of May, right? Then you can have Sosa go June into the All-Star break and then come out of the All-Star break and say, okay, what's third baseman's available for us to trade for?
You think Don Mattingly believes that Alec Bohm is a good hitter and that he will get out of this?
No.
I just don't know what you can evaluate right now that would suggest this is going to change. I suppose that, like, again, I've said this, the average, some of these balls will start to find holes. So it may become a little bit more, line drive-ish rather than chopping the ball into the dirt every at bat. Like there's like, I think some incremental uptick in some of this, but like not to the point where like he's even an average offensive player because of the lack of power. I just don't believe it's there. I don't think that they think it's there. And I think that they're just like, we're at a point where we don't have other great options. We're still not thrilled with what's going on at second base. We don't really have the other moves. So let's back him and see what goes on here. I know that a lot of this has been chalked up to, and we haven't really gone there too much. And I don't want to, like the personal stuff with the parents. Like, I don't think it's fair to really speculate. I know a lot of people seem to think that has had an impact on his performance, and it would not be insane to think that it has, but I don't know that to be true. I have no clue if that's impacting him. And if it is, like, that's a terrible thing. And you sympathize with them on a human level, but guys deal with stuff. Athletes have to deal with stuff. They have to compartmentalize. Things go wrong off the field and in their personal lives, and things happen to their families. And it's the reality of it. And I think a lot of times as fans, we're blind to it, that these guys aren't robots. But at the end of the day, you get 200 at bats to go show that you can do something, and you're not showing it. Like, I just don't know how you can reconcile that as the Phillies and say, like, well, let's continue to do this. I mean, you're just sort of at the point where something's got to give.
Yeah. Well, he's 29 years old, Bob, and the Phillies have played 38 games, and he has 4 extra base hits. 4.
Yeah.
Right. That's pacing out to like 19, 18 for an entire year. And that's assuming that he's in your lineup with regularity over the rest of the season. So yeah, you're right. Will the batting average come up from 159? Sure. But where does it get to? 225?
And this is what I know that we have a lot of loyal listeners. And so that's why I try not to like repeat or belabor points. But I had made the point, I think right around when Rob was fired, honestly. I think it might have been the weekend going into the Braves series where I said, like, I think you can move off of him and nobody's going to say, wow, what a mistake that was. He just signed on with whatever team and look at him go. He's out of his mind all of a sudden. Like the ceiling is what? A 260 to 270 hitter that has little to no power. I mean, it's the reality of it. And so I don't think you're going to get burned if you turn the page here. And by the way, like, he's not under contract beyond this season.
Right. Yeah.
The other part of it is that he's not a bench player. Like, he's a guy that like has to play. But burying him on your bench, I mean, you can do it in spurts, like you can do it short term. But if like over the remainder of the season, you're not going to carry him as a backup. He doesn't have enough flexibility.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, here's a good comment from Bayman 1003. He said, looked at Bohm's Savant page the other day. His expected batting average was 219.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 ways to look at that. That's horrible. But I would take 219 right now, like all day from him. 219 would be awesome. Imagine getting something offensively out of your third baseman. Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
Now, on the flip side of that, and I actually do have to run here in I got 4 minutes. I don't know if you're really tight to 11, but I have about 4 minutes.
Yeah, we're good.
Brandon Marsh, like, what a season this guy's having. I mean, he's hitting 333 right now with an 863 OPS, and he is 98 at bats against righties. They've obviously protected him against left-handers. He had a couple hits the other night. He's 7 for 25. He's hitting 280 against lefties right now. Brandon Marsh is never going to be a good hitter against lefties. It's never going to happen. And I fear that if they say, like, you are an everyday player, that it's going to lead to bad habits that may trickle into his impact against righties. Like, I think that is a possibility, and one of the reasons I'm very hesitant for the Phillies to move off of their traditional game plan with Brandon Marsh. But given his immense success against right-handers and the fact that he's at least been, like, functionally competent in 25 at-bats against lefties so far, has he earned the right to get more opportunities against lefties? Or do you say, no, we've been down this road one too many times. Let's just do what we're doing, and we're going to reap the benefits when it's appropriate to play him. How do you handle this?
Yeah, it's a tough call. I mean, look, I think you have to probably give him a couple of games against lefties because he's hitting the ball so well, Bob. I mean, and I know that I don't have confidence that he'll figure it out against left-handed pitching, but I think the combination of the fact that he's really hitting well and the fact that the Phillies don't have much beyond Harper after that spot in the lineup, that you kind of have to try, at least try. Because that's the other thing that they're going to need. They're going to need, come July 31st, they're going to need another right-handed outfielder bat. Yeah. Just going to need it. So I mean, I'm okay with them giving it a shot. And I think that what they've done, the way that they did is they said, okay, you're going to bat fifth for us when it's a righty, when it's a lefty, and you're in the lineup, you're going to bat towards the bottom. Yeah. And that's okay. And that's not the end of the world. You have him hit seventh. If he goes 0 for 2 against the left-handed starter, and then they bring in a reliever, okay, whatever. I'm okay with it. I just don't like him in center field.
No, I'd like to avoid that if possible. The only other note that I have about the current roster construction, I think it's probably time to flip Kemp and Reyes back. Kemp has heated up a little bit now. Yeah. For Lehigh Valley, he has 3 home runs this month. His average is up to 280. His OPS is around 880 down there. He seemed to have found something here in the last week or two. And I just don't look, I don't know that Felix Reyes is the future of the Phillies or anything like that. But to me, like, that's a guy where he's at in his development, probably needs more consistent playing time. I would probably consider making that swap and just take the hotter option.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think that's a bad call at all. I think Otto Kemp just needed to kind of get back to learning how to swing again.
If you thought that highly of him going into the season, that in winter press conferences that you were referencing his possible production and his uptick and ascension, and you thought enough of him to make him the primary right-handed option in a platoon with Brandon Marsh, then he should be back up here at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. One last thing. You got it? Or
one
you
last thing. Yeah. First of all, there's only 12 teams in baseball with a record over 500 at this point, which is pretty unbelievable that there's 18 teams under 500. And one of those 12 teams that's over 500, Bob, the Reds have lost 7 in a row, right? So it's like, it's crazy that that just baseball is kind of average this year. That said, I wanted to look at the teams with the top 7 records in baseball and see if you're surprised by any of them and if you think any of them are going to fall off. All right.
Sure.
The teams that are tied with the best record in baseball, there's 3 of them, which is the Braves, the Cubs, and the Yankees. By the way, Cubs won 15 in a row at home, which is crazy, right?
Lots of comebacks there this week too.
Yeah, Phillies are part of that stretch. Braves, Cubs, Yankees. Are you on board with all 3 for the remainder of the season?
Well, I certainly saw the way that the Cubs can hit. I know Phillies are playing terrible baseball, but yeah, I mean, like, is there a step backwards for them? Maybe. I think the Braves are the real thing. The Yankees I picked to win the AL, so I'm not surprised by the Yankees right now. So yeah, I would say that I think that those 3 teams will be division winners at the very least. I know Milwaukee's kind of like lurking and might get on a run, but yeah, right now I'll go with it.
Okay. The 4th best record and only a half game behind those guys is the Tampa Bay Rays.
Yeah.
Who saw this coming?
Yeah, a little bit of a product of luck. I mean, like, again, you go to run differential plus 19. There's other teams, by the way, the Braves plus 79, Cubs plus 50, Yankees plus 81. And then the team that's right under the Rays, the Dodgers plus 77. The Rays and the Cardinals, which I think you'll probably get to in a second, and they're the surprise of baseball, I think, in my opinion, probably exceeding expectations right now.
Yeah,
but the Rays are on a heater. I mean, they're 9-1 in the last 10 games.
Yeah, those are the 2 teams that were going to be my surprises. It's really the Rays and I mean, we know the Dodgers are 5th, and then 6th, tied for 6th, so 6 and 7 are the Cardinals and the Padres. Yeah. Padres we know have some talent, so that shouldn't surprise too much. But the Cardinals just kind of coming out of nowhere, and they're they won 8 out of 10. They're 22-15.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jordan Walker was such a highly regarded prospect a couple years ago and sort of struggled, obviously. And he's a big reason that team is playing as well as they are right now. I mean, Jordan Walker is probably a top 5 MVP candidate in the National League in this moment. He's 971 OPS. He's hitting 309 with 10 home runs. I mean, he's been awesome. And do I think that's going to last? I don't know. I don't know if there's a direct correlation between his success and the Cardinals as a whole. I would imagine that they will regress. I don't think that's a very good team, but I mean, right now, sometimes you just catch fire and you go with it.
Yeah, so there you go. So there's a couple of teams. I'm with you. I think the Rays and the Cardinals will fall back. I do think the Cubs will fall back a little bit. I don't think that they're that good. I think they will fall back a little bit. They're off to a great start to the season. Good for them. All right. Well, that'll do it for us here on Phightin Words. As always, you can find Phightin Words wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Apple Podcast, Spotify, Amazon Music, Pandora. But the best place to find us right here on YouTube. Subscribe on YouTube. Click that thumbs up, ring the bell. You'll always know when Bob and I go live, just like all of our commenters who are in the show today. Thank you to them. And if you're listening in the podcast feed and you want to be part of the show on YouTube Live, you can find us at youtube.com/@Phightin Words. For Bob Wankel, I'm Anthony Sanfilippo saying have a wonderful weekend, everyone. And we will talk to you on Monday after the Phillies sweep the Rockies. Right, Bob?
We'll see.
We'll see. Have a great weekend, everybody.